Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Troy. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next session presented by Pearson, our sponsor. It's called Real Life, the student experience, and that title offers the perfect frame. So please welcome Gerald Hallford, a senior at Lone Star College, Tomball. Sterling Woerner is a junior at Texas A&M, and Eduardo Manzano is a sophomore at Texas Southmost College. And here to lead the conversation, John Fallon, Pearson's chief executive. John, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody. I've not been visiting Austin for quite a long time as Ron Brownstein, but I have been a regular visitor for the last 15 years as part of my work, and it is always exhilarating to return and see the progress that's been made. And as you can tell, with every trip, my Texas accent gets just that little bit better. So thank you to all our friends at Atlantic Media for putting together such a great event and for partnering on the poll. And thanks in particular to Ron. And I think the work that his team have done around this whole Next America idea has been really incredible in starting to put a spotlight on some of the really important demographic shifts that are happening across the company, and they have a huge impact on the work that we do, particularly in education. And as ever, the journalist in Ron did a brilliant job of summarising the poll in 3 headlines, which is what you earn depends on what you learn. 2, there's still a lot of barriers to learning, particularly in skills. And 3, that those who would benefit the most are the very people who face the biggest barriers to learning. And that's really goes to the heart of everything that we do as a company, is in trying to help more people make that shift from education to employment, to translate learning into earning in a meaningful way. And our ultimate customer, the people who really matters, that we judge our success or not, are really the students that we exist to serve. And yet, as we all know, they're often the very people whose voice is not heard as loudly or clearly as it could be in this debate. And yet ultimately, all learning is, of course, intensely personal. So huge privilege for me to be joined by 3 young people who all have inspiring stories to tell about the way that they have, each in their own way, overcome their own barriers to learning and are making progress. So let's start. Let's start with Gerald. Do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your life and how you got at the age of 29 to be entering community college?
Okay, well, I am 31 now, and I have a 7-year-old daughter. So I, out of high school, went into the workforce, worked in the construction area, kind of bounced around, didn't really find anything that I felt fit me. And so at the age of 29, I decided that I wanted to go back to school and pursue my degree. And I decided to go with community college because it was local, it's affordable, and I'm now going to be graduating from there in May and moving on to the University of Houston.
Great. And we were talking just before, and you were talking about what it was like returning to math after a 10-year break for the first time. Do you want to just, because this is a huge issue for many people in community college, so just talk a little bit about your own experiences on that.
Right. So when I decided to go back to school, I wasn't sure how much I would have retained. I know that I did well in math in high school, but going back and taking the placement test, I did place into remedial math initially, and so I said, you know what, I'm 29, I'm almost 30 years old, and I don't have time for remedial classes. So I decided to go back and study on my own and do a little bit of tutoring that was provided for me by the college, and retake that test, and I did place into to college algebra and was able to make an A in that class. So
yeah, it was really interesting. I was talking to Yuri and the folk down at the Dana Center at the University of Texas Austin, and the work that they're doing around improving success rates in remedial math, and they talked about the vital importance of personal motivation, and I think we've just heard a very real example of what that actually means in practice. We'll come back, Gerald, and explore a little bit more of that in a minute, but first let's go on to to Sterling. Sterling, tell us a little bit about yourself, because we travelled down in the car together, and I was overwhelmed by the fact that you're already a successful entrepreneur who set up your own business to pay to help you through college. So just tell us a little bit more about that and your own experiences today.
Okay, I grew up in your standard white middle-class family, and we always had enough to travel and to have experiences, but I knew that, you know, being the middle of 5 children, that if I wanted to go to college, and honestly it wasn't a question. My parents expected me to go to college, and I expected myself to go to college and to do well for myself. So being the entrepreneur that I like to call myself, I grew up and I saw my dad run his own successful business, and I saw my mom continuing her education throughout, not only when I was in middle school, but even when I was in high school. She went back for another degree. And so I capitalized on the fact that I found a skill that I was pretty good at, and that I realized that I was good at teaching others. So I opened up my own small business, Swim School by Sterling, and for 3 years now, it has grown to where it was completely booked up within 48 hours of me opening registration. I taught over 120 kids this past summer, and I was in the pool for 10 to 12 hours a day for 12 straight weeks, so a lot of sunlight.
So from the brief conversation we've had, you strike me as someone who is completely set up for a career in business, and I'm already making sure that the headhunters of Pearson have got you on their radar for when you graduate. But you were telling me that actually really you'd like to pursue a career in law, and other factors have perhaps helped influence your decision.
I've always been really intrigued by law, and I never, it was always a great idea, but I felt like, I'm struggling to put myself completely by myself through college now, and unfortunately going for another, 6, 7, 8 years was not realistic for me financially, but I do, I'm one of those students that I genuinely love to learn, and I want to take in as much as I can, and take every opportunity that I can. And so I'm just really intrigued by law, and I'm intrigued by furthering my education as much as I can.
So the affordability of college education is a big factor for you in helping you think about what your career choices would be.
It's the absolute biggest factor for me. Like I said, middle class, we live paycheck to paycheck, but we were comfortable. But there was no extra money to throw $100,000 into an education. And that's where I knew that if I wanted to be successful and comfortable, that I'd have to find a way to come up with the funds myself. And even now I'm working 2 jobs, attending class full time, and doing side jobs on the side, just because I like to live comfortably and not have to stress to buy my groceries each week or pay for my gas and those simple bills.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then Eduardo, you grew up in a town that now close to my heart, Brownsville. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and your own career aspirations, and why you chose Texas Southmost College.
As Mr. Fallon stated, I'm coming all the way down from the Valley. I come from a town in Brownsville, Texas. I'm attending Texas Southmost College. I'm about to graduate hopefully next semester. Growing up in Brownsville, Texas, high school was a great experience for me. They always pushed you to go to college. It was never a question, as Sterling stated. It was always, we're going to college. That's what we're going to do at university. And that's something I've always lived by. The fact that I've gone to Texas Southmost College, it's granted me such a great experience, especially at such a low cost that, most students use an excuse not to go to college. It's too expensive, and to an extent it's true. Students find themselves in debt all the time. I myself find myself in debt now. However, Texas Southmost Colleges has granted me a great experience. I'm sitting here now with CEO of Pearson talking on this panel, and that in itself is amazing to me. And the college has
You'll do many greater things than that, don't worry.
And the college has granted me that. And to me, that's amazing. And even better is the fact that students have this opportunity, just like I do, to come to a college. It's just not about being the smartest. It's about going to college and trying, guys. And in honesty, Texas Southmost College has been a great experience to me.
And what do you want to do ultimately?
Ultimately, hopefully, I want to transfer once I graduate from my associate's degree here at the University of Texas at Austin. I want to get myself into biomedical engineering, and after that, hopefully attend medical school and become a physical therapist. I want to help people rehabilitate themselves. Why physical therapy? When I was in Brownsville, my high school, Homer Hanna High School, they had a medical magnet program. It pushed me a lot. It got me into clinicals, clinical rotations, and I found myself inside of physical therapy in the hospital. When I was working along the therapist, I liked what he was doing, helping the people rehabilitate themselves from injuries. You would hear stories of people not walking again, and the physical therapist was determined to help that person to walk, and we would go through rehabilitation. And that to myself was amazing, and this has pushed me to become the student that I am today, and to want to become a better student and one day become a physical therapist.
So, and your ambition and drive and passion, it's just palpable to everybody, isn't it? And yet, even so, as we were talking earlier, it's hard for you to get through your associate degree in the 2 years. Just talk a little bit about the practicalities and why it has been so difficult.
Sometimes within college, you find yourself with a busy schedule, such as work or just personal life. And even though that shouldn't be an excuse, when you try to find yourself, sometimes some courses might be too occupied. So therefore, you can't finish your associates in 2 years. Sometimes you have to take summer courses. However, summer courses are not covered financial aid sometimes, and you just can't have the funding for it. I find myself, instead of graduating 2 years, which would be this semester, I will be graduating next semester, which mark an associate's degree at 2.5 years. If I would be able to get all my courses on time, I would have graduated this semester. And that in itself has been an issue. Sometimes I want to take a course and it's too full. So availability, a larger course, a larger curriculum would be much better to help students like myself graduate a lot faster and continue on to our next step.
So really interesting how you manage that way through. So a couple of questions that came out of the poll that we got, thousands of people interested in your specific view. So we got 3.5 minutes, so relatively short answers. Did school prepare you for college?
Definitely.
Eduardo? Yeah?
Yes.
Completely? Nothing you would change about school whatsoever?
No, especially that magnet, that high school program, the magnet program at Homer Hanna High School. It definitely helped me and it pushed me to become what I want to become today and in the future. So, yes.
Fantastic. And yourself?
I kind of have a different answer. I don't believe that my high school really prepared me for what I was getting myself into. I didn't really have, I knew I wanted to go into business, but I didn't really know what the next steps would be to get there. And I didn't take advantage of the opportunities like dual credit and AP classes because I honestly wasn't aware of how beneficial they would be going into college. So I went in with 6 hours maybe.
So greater sort of understanding in high school of just how much value dual credit and AP would give you later. And what about you, Joe?
I believe that I was prepared academically for college, but I don't think that I really had a grasp. I think I had a wrong perception of what actually college was, and I wasn't aware of the different kinds of programs and things that were available to help me succeed. And I think that before beginning college, I was actually intimidated because I was afraid I wouldn't be smart enough, or I wouldn't, people say, well, college isn't for me. And, as we were talking backstage, really anybody who applies themselves and gives 100% can do it. And I didn't realize that. I thought that it was all about how smart you were and how high your test scores were, and I found that to not be true.
So I think you've just given a brilliant example of what a pathway, different pathways, and making it clear to people is. So in the interest of time, last question. So when we were coming down in the car and you were telling me all about the student debt you were racking up, I was trying to reassure you by quoting you the statistic that over your lifetime, on average, you'll earn, $500,000, $600,000 more by going to school and getting a graduate degree than if you'd left after high school. But you still thought, well, that's easy for a middle-aged man in a suit to say. It doesn't quite feel that way to you. So free college education, big debate in the election. Gerald, where do you stand on this?
That's a complicated issue.
You should be running for president. Yeah.
Personally, I don't know how the financial, the economic implications of something like that would be. It sounds great, but how much would people appreciate it, or would it be worth as much if it was just given to everyone?
Well, one of the things you were saying to me was how much help you'd had from different loans and grants, and how much public information in making sure those are available and understood is to people.
That would be great. It's like, me being independent, I was able to get Pell Grants and things like that, and then through community college I've been able to enroll in different programs that have opened up opportunities for scholarships that I would never have been able to get, had I tried to go to a 4-year college right away and things like that. So I think that there is a lot of things out there that can help you know, students pursue their education if they were aware of them.
Yeah. Sterling, what's your?
I think maybe not free, like universal education, but maybe like debt forgiveness after you graduate. I know that it's sad that, and this is for a lot of my friends as well, that you can't continue your education if you don't have the funds. And I would love nothing more than to continue my education, but realistically, it's just not an option unless maybe I could find a company that would, you know, help me out, or because I personally don't really qualify for anything. So.
And Eduardo, you get the last word.
As Gerald stated, it's a very sensitive topic. However, I do agree that accessibility, free education, free college is very important, especially from a community where I come from, where not many people can afford college or they don't receive financial aid. The more people you get going to college, the more people that are educated, the more people that get to move on to greater things. College and university is completely different situations. A free college can get you to that university, and then you have the means and the abilities to pay for that university, to pay for that education, to better yourself, to become what you want to become. Just because you have a free education the first 2 years doesn't mean people are not going to take it seriously, they're going to take it for granted. It's going to help them move to the next step forward. And to me, that is very important, to have a free education.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you to our three panelists. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Great job.